What does culture actually mean?
I think it's... When I was at the Melbourne Storm, there were a few key light bulb moments that gave me this perception of, wow, this is culture that I dreamed of.
With love, I really want to make sure that you guys grab why your culture sucks right now.
As a leader, the most powerful form of communication you have is...
How would you guys split the difference between a culture on vibes versus this performance culture?
Performance is almost building a...
Cooper Cronk was a fullback and, a journeyman, and then he turned into the greatest halfback of our era. So that didn't happen by chance or luck. That was a byproduct of the system and the culture.
But at Norths, genuinely, your jersey can't touch the ground.
Let me get this right. Culture isn't free breakfast. It's not a fruit bowl. It's not like a Nespresso pod machine at work. This sounds like this is a lot more about...
Grand final at Leichhardt Oval. To win the game, try over the line, we drop the ball, lose by 1 point. Boys are shattered, come down the sheds, 20,000 people there at Leichhardt. If you come down into our sheds, I remember walking in, the boys are broken, on the sheds. Every single jersey stacked up on the physio table. Now, does that win you games of footy? Not that alone, but I believe that these is part of the building blocks.
Non-negotiables are the floor, they are not the ceiling.
All right, boys, welcome to the pod.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to be here, mate.
So, for context, everyone, I know a lot of the owners that we speak to talk a lot about they're burning out. Mm-hmm. A lot of them have got a team full of casuals and spare parts, and they're trying to build $1 million business that can sustain itself under management, spit out the cash flow. But the issue is a lot of them are still struggling with a team and a culture that's not really at the world-class winning level.
They're not at that high-performance level yet.
They're not the high-performance level. So we found these two blokes hanging outside, Zach and Shandor. So for the owners, I'm just going to introduce these guys, and this is a leadership, culture, winning mindset for the team panel. And it's going to be a two-parter, so definitely hang around for the next episode as well. Most studio owners don't actually know what a winning culture looks like, feels like, sounds like. They think paying staff a little bit more than anyone else or taking them out for a team breakfast or, a team lunch is culture. That's bribery, not culture. That's why they're burnt out, and that's why their culture sucks. So, Shandor, we brought you in because you've been part of, is it actually, is it the most successful sporting team in Australia?
I might be biased, but I think it's fair to say, yeah. I think they'd rival other sports across the world.
So Melbourne Storm, we're talking about, obviously. Doesn't matter if you like rugby, don't follow it, whatever. For us fans, the coach and the Melbourne Storm program we keep hearing about manages to get an off cut from any other team and turn them into the next superstar. Fucking no one else could do it, but you guys could. So we brought you in to kind of spill the beans on what the hell goes on behind the scenes. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, great. Now, Zach, current coach, head coach of Norths Rugby, you've got an incredible knack of taking an underfunded team and taking them to the finals for the last 4 years. You've got a winning percentage of 80% plus, and you've also got a knack for turning amateurs into pros. I think last year, 14 of your players turned pro. Is that right?
Yeah, 14 went to professional environments or retired, yeah.
So there's got to be...
Could be a secret.
That's not a fluke, right? If you've done it for the last 4 years, and at the time of recording right now, tomorrow, you guys play... What game do you play tomorrow?
We've got a prelim final, yeah. So either we'll be in the grand final in 8 days' time at Leichhardt, or you won't hear from me for a couple of days.
So there's got to be a way, there's got to be frameworks and formulas and certain things that you stick to be able to produce that year on year.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck involved, but yeah, there's some sort of unglamorous habits, rituals, and behaviours that can set you up for success. Yeah.
And are you cool if we talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
So it's called Unfiltered because that's what it is. Okay, so we're just having a chat, and for the target audience, my listeners out there, I'm talking to you now, guys. Okay, so if you're driving, pull over, take some notes, or if you're working out, definitely drop the bar and take some notes here. With love, I really want to make sure that you guys grab why your culture sucks right now. I'm just going to get straight to it. Yes, fucking why your culture sucks right now and why it's killing you with burnout. That's it. What a winning culture actually looks like from world-class sporting organizations right down to business. And the similarities are uncanny.
Yeah, well, I think you left a part of Zach's intro. He's actually had a business career as well.
Of course.
Yeah, so Zach's done it in the boardroom and on the business field. So there's some parallels that we'll dive into there as well, Zach.
Yeah, there's
That's
a couple of clients who I work with, gyms, accounting firms, law firms, who sort of are stuck. And the parallels with sport and business, I think there's so much
There's so
similarity.
much.
Yeah.
They talk about sports is sort of only this environment where, how much better are you actually going to get in life by kicking a goal from a sideline 100 times over? How much better are you going to get from improving your 1RM on your bench press? It's not necessarily that act. It's all the behaviors, rituals, and standards that are underpinned with that transfer into your business and your life. So there's a lot of similarities with both.
Okay, perfect. So I reckon in episode 1, we will look at what culture actually is, how we define it, how we build it, and all that kind of stuff. And then the second part, let's get tactical. What does the playbook look like? Let's open the books, and then how can our listeners actually install with a team full of casuals and spare parts? How do they get to the grand final 4 years in a row? Yeah, is that cool with you guys?
Yeah,
Love it.
Perfect.
All right, so let's start. Nice and big. Let's go to you first, Shandor. What does culture actually mean?
First, I want to give an example because I'm a bit nerdy about this. So I'm really excited to combine my stories and lessons with Zach's experience and frameworks. But first thing, to link the rugby and rugby league chat as well, when I was at the Melbourne Storm, there were a few key light bulb moments that gave me this perception of, wow, this is culture that I dreamed of. First one was, and I reflect back to, if you remember when you were back at school, if you tried too hard, if you asked the teacher a question, you're a teacher's pet. You'd be bullied.
Yeah.
When I was at other clubs, and nothing against those clubs, had a great time, and maybe it's changed, that's how it felt. So if I tried too hard, I turned up early, I made an extra effort, I was almost the odd one out. I was a try hard. And that's kind of like a little bit of rugby league culture, but also male culture.
Oh.
When I went to the Storm, I was like, this is finally where I wanted to be. It's a dream come true, because the exact opposite to what I said was rewarded and glorified.
It's cool to be a rugby nerd. It's cool to know your detail and do your
100%.
Yeah.
But it was like, if you weren't doing that, you were the odd one out. You were ostracized. So I was like, those things really meant a lot to me. And from a young age, I had to value those because my work ethic was actually got me to where I was. Yeah, I had a little bit of talent, but I wasn't super talented like some of the guys coming through. So those things that I hung my hat on weren't rewarded, glorified, or acknowledged by my peers and the environment. But at the Melbourne Storm, they were. The other thing that was really special was the Crusaders came in, Scotty Robinson at the peak of their powers, and we're very closely linked to the All Blacks at the Storm, which again is another, highlight of what culture really is. They came in and presented to us each year, great clubs, and I'm sure Zach has the same. You have a theme, something that you work towards, a purpose that gives you more meaning to what you're doing. They presented, the Melbourne Storm was their theme for that year.
Shit, really?
So I was like, you want to talk, if that's not an example of a team that's got great culture, I don't know what is. So those two things really stood out for me as to like, wow, this is a really powerful culture. And it comes down to systems, standards, and accountability for me, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
Systems, everyone write this down. So systems, standards, accountability.
What did the All Blacks specifically single down on? Like, why do they pick the Storm?
Well, so the Crusaders as an extension. So they picked the Storm based on their legacy, firstly, but again, just the standards that they have set. So they looked at certain players, and when you're deciding on your themes, you're looking for reasons or stories or meaning behind what you're trying to achieve that year. So I think I don't know what it was, the Purple Storm, but to see they'd created a video which no doubt would have been used in preseason to inspire and motivate the players.
Wow.
Some things about the Storm that I reflect on, they have had the same team in their football department for the best part of 16 to 18 years. So that's a very unique set of circumstances.
You mean like in the back office?
I mean, head coach, football manager.
Okay, of course.
So like if it's a gym,
so much IP.
if it's a gym, that's what I mean. Like if you were there with the same team for the last 18 years, like what would you have achieved? That luxury does not happen at any other
Is that
rugby
not
league
normal?
club. No, definitely not. You've got a turnstile of coaches. So that does allow you to create some level of consistency, but pull that apart. Then the next argument will be, well, they had these great players, the big three, the Billy Slaters, the Cameron Smith, the Cooper Cronk.
Yeah.
Billy Slater couldn't get a start in first grade and was a whippet and a jockey. Cameron Smith got let go by the Broncos, and Cooper Cronk was a fullback and, a journeyman. And then he turned into the greatest halfback of our era. So that didn't happen by chance or luck. That was a byproduct of the system and the culture.
And then when those three left, it was like, that's the end of the Storm. And it's like, no.
There you go.
Some guy called Pappenhausen.
So it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. And why did these people excel and why do people excel at the Storm? It's a byproduct of their recruitment. They recruit on character.
Okay.
And we'll touch on this in terms of the translation with our system. If I come in and you've got a coach and you're a business owner, like I can teach you the incidentals of maybe sales or coaching, but what I can't teach you is character and values. So if I can recruit on that and you've got a work ethic and you're a good person and you're going to be a great teammate, you're going to be a great fit here in our culture.
We heard Bellamy used to take people out for a coffee. There was like
So this is an amazing story that I didn't get the opportunity to hear until recently, 2 years ago. So I don't know if you know my story of how I got to the Storm. So when I wanted to go to the Melbourne Storm, obviously I had my 4-year suspension. Yeah. When I was coming back, I didn't want my manager to contact Craig because I know he's old school. I didn't even know if he uses his email.
Yeah.
So I wrote him a letter.
Like a handwritten letter?
Yeah, like a letter. And I said, this is who I am. This is my story. This is what I think I can add to the club. And I didn't have any expectations, but I thought I'd at least get some communication. Anyway, a couple of days later, he gave me a call and he said, mate, let's catch up at a cafe. That alone was shocking, the fact that he wanted to catch up a week later.
How'd you deliver the letter?
I sent it. Sent it to the club. Yeah. So then a week later, we meet up at the cafe. Remember, I don't know any of the information that you're talking about. For the listeners, the information is, I'll say what I did at the cafe first. So I went there, met up with him, and I kind of just felt like he was sizing me up, like wanted to see if I was serious, see if I was fit and healthy. And 30 minutes into the conversation, which again was completely unexpected, he said, I've spoken to the powers that be and we've got a contract for you at the club.
Wow.
So that was a huge moment for me, after everything that I've been through. And it was the start of a journey of things that we'll talk about in terms of leadership, gaining respect. And now, circa, as of say a year ago, I listened to a podcast that Craig was on, which he's never on. And he explained that what he does is he takes young recruits or players to the cafe and he sees how they speak to and treat the barista or the wait staff. And luckily, that's something that it's definitely in my wheelhouse, but it's something that I focus on, which is how I speak to people, using my manners, all the rest of it. So, but to hear that
it's your character.
To hear that was his kind of way of getting an understanding for someone, that was so cool to hear.
It's the pleasant thank you test.
And I mean, I don't know how or what, there's probably many ways to skin that cat, but to engineer a scenario where you can kind of get a feel for the character and value of a person, I think should be a non-negotiable if you're recruiting.
But take notes, everyone listening, take notes. Like there's so much insight in that.
Do you do anything like that, Zach?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of stories, but I haven't received any letters, that's for sure.
Do you have a ritual for recruitment though?
Yeah, like I'm super frank with what we're about. I tell them that, high performance is not glamorous. Like it's all the mundane tasks. At Norths, we're really big on our NTRs, so things no talent required. A lot of teams talk about it, but I can tell plenty of stories where like.
What are some examples of like NTRs?
Yeah, I could probably. There's one in particular, like the Norths jerseys don't touch the ground.
Oh, I love this.
I say, shit blokes take their jersey off after a game. They got the strapping tape on it. It's muddy. It's right in the middle of the dressing shed. Most teams will pile them up in the middle. Average blokes will take them off, turn it the right way around, throw it on the kit bag. But at Norths, like genuinely, your jersey can't touch the ground. And it's become this ingrained thing. Keep in mind, like probably 5 years ago when I started at Norths before coming across from Manly, I don't think there's any players who are still at the club then. Like they've all moved on. But things like this sort of legacy, these habits, rituals have remained. They'll say to a bloke in the first trial, we'll be playing at some backfield in the country or up the coast. And they'll say, mate, pick your jersey up. I'll say, yeah.
So one of the players will, not you.
The players will, yeah, which is what we'll get deeper in. I think having an environment which is much, I was lucky enough a month ago to spend some time at the Storm. If you can create a team-driven environment rather than boss-directed or manager-directed or coach-directed, it's that much more powerful.
Okay.
It's driven from within.
All right.
The only thing more powerful than that is if it's self-driven. So the player or the staff member in the gym is driving it themselves. And we can talk about that. But jerseys don't touch the ground. Right through to 12 months ago or 11 months and 3 weeks ago, we were at grand final at Leichhardt Oval. To win the game, try over the line, we drop the ball, lose by 1 point. Boys are shattered, come down the sheds, 20,000 people there at Leichhardt. If you come down into our sheds, I remember walking in, the boys are broken, like on the sheds. every single jersey stacked up on the physio table. So our old boy manager, John, picks them up, puts them in the bag. Now, does that win you games of footy? Not that alone, but I believe that these is part of the building blocks. I think as well as a leader, like something which I've only created recently, but to build a bit of a philosophy of what you stand for as a leader. A lot of it's like romantic narrative. You think, well, that's bullshit. What's that going to give me to winning games of footy or getting more revenue for my gym or more members? But I think it's something to underpin. So mine is, how can I use footy as a vehicle to create better men? And better men are successful. They're driven. They lose at times. When they lose, they bounce back. The recruitment thing's interesting. It's probably a story that I can link to when we come to the table to recruit players. Unfortunately, with the situation with North Sydney Oval, from a revenue perspective, we only generate sort of 60% of the revenue of our competing clubs. Yet this year, we're the only Shoot Shield team for first grade to never miss a final series for 10 years straight.
Wow.
So when I sit down with players who, and thankfully, my biggest source of recruitment are boys within our program. So they'll come to me and say, Beery, I know this 10 from this club or this prop from this club has heard about what we want to do with North, or what we do at North and wants to come on board. There was a guy who was a big fish in a small pond. So he was the number one player in the Canberra comp. He was sort of borderline with the Brumbies, couldn't really break it. He emailed, actually, there you go. He emailed, didn't send a letter. I won't say his name, but most of the guys who listen will know. He emailed the top 4 clubs. So I think it was us, Randwick at the time, East and Sydney Uni. After that, he met with the 4 of us and I said to him, mate, you're not going to get more money coming to us, but this is what you're going to get. And I laid out all of those things. I said, when you finish with us, you're going to become a better bloke and a better footy player as a result, and build these skills that have far surpassed 1 year in the Shoot Shield. Came back to me, joined Norths. Anyway, story goes, he got down the starting number 8 jersey, which was the most depth we had in that position. Played 3 games for us, was outstanding. We played Randwick at Coogee Oval. He got his front tooth knocked out in the 80th minute.
Wow.
To play in Norths, he kept a part-time job in Canberra, a bit like reserve grade for league, playing for the Bears.
Yeah.
Driving down 3 days a week to Canberra and back, and he had a beaten up sort of Commodore. Things happen in threes, right? So poor bloke lost his tooth. He got hit with the bills. He had private healthcare, but I think it was like $1,000 on top of that. He got ruled out because of the tooth situation for like 4 to 6 weeks. Then when he's driving to Canberra, his car engine went. So he was in a dark place. He sort of strained situation with the missus because of all the travel. We lent him the club car, but we needed that back. Anyway, you fast forward 6 weeks later, return game, we played Newcastle, North Sydney Oval, comes off the bench, scores a try. We sing the team song in the sheds. And our captain says, boys, sit down. And I was about to say his name, but they say, mate, stand up. And he's there and he's got this new double fitted mouth guard. And they said, mate, we know how much pain you've been under mentally and financially. Our match payments for the last 5 games of every bloke in this room is in this envelope, and this covers your teeth.
Oh my God.
And mate, from there, like we went on a run to then win the minor premiership, make the grand final. That was 2 years ago, 23. But you talk about like joining an environment to play a game of footy or to be a better player. Like when I sit down with players, that story, we were in those 4 walls of the dressing shed, like the amount of players who've heard about that. And I think that speaks volume about the environment. So today we'll probably talk about how you arrive coincidence, but yeah, mate, like I think your recruitment's your biggest filter, but then also your biggest barometer of where your culture.
So so you've left a lot of clues there, both of you. And so how would you define culture?
Oh yeah, I think it's the actions, behaviours, standards around the place in a footy sense, not just on the field or at training or in a gym sense when your members are in there. It's what you do when they're not there. It's how do you stand at the front of a class and greet all your members when you come in, and do you do it when you really don't feel like it? I think it's how people describe your environment long after they're left or who come in temporarily and go out.
The thing that struck me for both of those stories is that it wasn't driven by yourself from the top or the owner of the club. And same thing at the Storm. It wasn't necessarily always driven by Craig, like in terms of, it's the rest of the players too, right? So I think that's the biggest clue so far. Well, there's 2 things. Because instead of, when like owners, when we assemble the team, stop falling into the just fill the gap trap. You know, you need someone to punch out 10 shifts, so you just find a spare part
First
from
person,
first person, 2 arms,
Yep.
2 legs, let's go. And you're always just getting spare parts in, and you almost turn a blind eye to any character.
Mhm.
So we had a line and we still have it in our hiring funnel. We do character over qualifications. We can teach the rest. We can fucking teach the rest. We want to bring in good people, and we'll teach the rest. We've got in our vision book as well, there's a line that says, you know, how we describe our organization and our leadership is we want to raise good humans.
Right.
So I think that's a real hint for people. Now, talk to us about standards, rules, behaviours, rituals. Let's go to the Storm first. Like, what were some of the standards and non-negotiables? Talk us through that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to premise that, I think I've said this to you before, non-negotiables are the floor. They are not the ceiling. They are not aspirational.
Right, everyone write that down. Non-negotiables are the floor, not the ceiling. It's just the price. That's just the price of entry, is it?
These are behaviours that we should not have to question, refer to. These are the non-negotiables, the things that we just have to do. Like they're not aspirational. They're not goals. They're not KPIs. They're not targets.
They're driven by yourself as well.
100%.
No one should make you do it. Yeah.
And those
How fucking good is that?
those personal standards, everything. If you just reflect again on what we said, even sport in Zach's reference, that is not the vehicle.
Oh.
It's the humans that need to be impacted. If you change the man, then you're going to see that reflected in the performance in your culture as a team. My biggest impact, and like I went to the Storm, tore my ACL 3 weeks in. I played some games. I was a part of a premiership winning team, but it wasn't like the highlight of my career. But
Yeah.
I look back on that with so much gratitude because it turned a boy into a man. Like, and it's the little things, you know, so not leaving the jersey on the floor. Who gives a shit really? Like, what does that even mean? It means nothing unless you give it meaning and purpose.
Right.
So these things need to be engineered. Now, although placing your jersey on the floor actually has no real literal meaning,
Yeah, to a
it's
KPI.
a resemblance of the culture, but only if you choose and empower others to believe that. So that's one action that if you can change these behaviors and actually give it meaning and purpose. I remember being in a auditorium with the rest of the team, and anyone who would come in, the whole team would stand up in unison, single file, and go through and shake the person's hand. Again, the layperson might think, yeah, great, but that is a resemblance of culture and standards. You know, so it's these small actions and behaviors, but even Zach's recruitment strategy, he laid it out. This isn't going to be glamorous. It isn't going to be pretty. You're not going to get all the cash and money, but this is what we're going to give you. And you go away, and if that person actually understands it and means something to them, they'll come back. And if they don't, well, you've already got the answer that you were looking for.
Yeah.
There is no test. It's like, I laid it out. This is what I'm looking for. This is the opportunity. If you value that opportunity, which I bloody did, I went to the Storm and I was behind Josh Adokar and Suliasu Vunivalu, the 2 best wingers in the game. I didn't go there thinking this is going to change my life and career. I knew it was going to change me. And I finally could be a part of something that I've always dreamed of, being a part of a culture, because I knew that, I understood that. There are people that haven't been exposed to it, but they understand it. They want to be a part of it. Lay it out and let them land their plane. If they want to be a part of something like that, they'll make it pretty obvious. But one other thing with standards and behavior, which we talk about that relates to the systems, when I went there, I expected, maybe similar to the Norths journey, I expected it to be really hard. So like, you know, nothing would be given to us. It would be a really tough environment. It was the exact opposite.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, you know, we had everything given to us. We were fed. My clothes were folded, ready for training the next day. The reason they did that was the standard at the Melbourne Storm is effort, not skill or talent. So when I went there for the first 2 weeks, firstly, we do something called the work program.
Okay.
I've heard
Right.
about this. Yeah.
Talk.
So you go there and you train, you get up, you're training at 5 a.m. doing weights, you're doing a trade from 7 till 3 and you're on the field at 4:30.
So just for everyone, so a trade means
So I was doing landscaping, which sucks.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm sure all of them were hard, but mine seemed particularly hard. And I was
It is for everyone.
landlord. Yeah,
Like,
everyone.
It doesn't matter if you're the number one sign.
That's why it's amazing. It doesn't matter if you play for Australia, you've got 300 games, it doesn't matter. You go through the work program. And it was really hard. It was way harder than anything else that I've ever done. It was just the relentlessness of it. Getting up every day, training twice, working a trade all day. But the great thing I got out of it, and I'm grateful that I have a strong self-awareness. I look back and I was like, geez, I'm grateful to be at training.
Is that what it is?
Straight away, just shifts your perspective.
So the point of the work and how long does it last for?
2 weeks.
So for 2 weeks, but the point of that is what?
The point of it, I think, is to shift your perspective and realize like how lucky you actually are to be
playing footy,
training and playing
Yeah,
football with your
gratitude,
mates for a living.
Yeah,
Like,
gratitude.
Because like that's the
Please.
real job.
Yeah.
This
Like,
is just
training's hard. But if I hadn't have done that, I probably would have been like, training's so hard. For the next 3 months, I was like,
Unless I'm not doing
I'm
that.
stoked to be here.
Again,
Right.
2 week, like a fortnight's not that long, but you still talk about it now.
Yeah.
It's like the jersey on the floor. It's like,
It
writing
was an
your
experience,
work-ons
right?
and positives in your journal after every game. That's it. It's what it represents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a ritual, right? And then the
Okay.
following for that, again, doesn't matter who you are, the final moments before you go away for Christmas, you do the IDQ camp, which is the SAS I Don't Quit camp.
Oh,
So,
wow. Tell me more.
Now this takes the cafe situation to a whole new extreme, but it's 3 days, you don't sleep, and you go all through Melbourne. The first day, you're just broken. So we went from Amy Park to across the road and then to Crown and then to the beach and then out to the 1,000 steps. And we just got flogged for like 18 hours, even to the point, I don't know if for anyone who's been to the Melbourne 1,000 steps, walking up it, I was like, this is hard at 2 a.m. Walking up it the second time was hard. And then when they told us we had to carry a teammate up it on the third
Oh
time,
my God.
that was really hard. But a beautiful thing happens when we get to the farm.
Fox.
I didn't get a choice.
Fox.
I didn't get a choice. Beautiful thing happens when you get to the farm at 5 a.m. You sit down, and there's a term for this that I've heard, but we sit in a group and it's a very confronting moment, but you each stand up as an individual and you identify your worst two and your top two. So it's pretty confronting, especially if you're identified as the worst two performers at that point, 24 hours in. But it's a beautiful moment that gives an opportunity to those people to have a comeback into the next situation that we do. But it's a great example of communication. We all want to be here, at least that's the perception. We all want to be successful and we all want to be a great player. But if we're not willing to give open, honest feedback and hold each other responsible, it's all going to crumble. And I think we'll talk about how communication is probably the biggest failure and problem, especially in a gym setting.
Right.
Whether I'm too scared, I'm empathetic, and
Yeah.
that's become my
What if
identity.
they leave? Yeah.
I don't want to give honest feedback
That's
or
right.
it's uncomfortable. It has to become a part of the process. And that goes back to player accountability. When you have that, and that was my biggest reflection of the Storm, a few months in when I watched, if you guys know Tino, who's the captain of the Titans now, but he was a young kid, and there was a drill. We do an MAS run. So you run up and back 10 times. We did 3 sets. Now, Tino probably was coming last for every one of those, but on the last run, he came first,
Wow.
Cardinal Sinzak.
Cardinals.
And I watched Billy Slater just absolutely tear him to shreds. To be honest,
Well, because he was sandbagging the
Yeah.
because that's your first effort is your best effort.
Wow.
That's how it works. So, I mean, I wouldn't even dream of doing that. You should know better. You know that everyone's going to be looking at you in disgust. But to watch, I didn't hear one coach say a word. To watch the player hold him accountable with no fear. Like, these are our standards. And a strong leadership team is really important. I'm sure Zach has established that within Norths, but the leadership team upholds the standards, and with great responsibility, they have to ensure that everything that they do reflects the standards. Because if they're not driving it, then the standards you're willing to accept are what you endorse.
Yeah.
If I am willing, because I'm afraid of confrontation or to have a conversation, you've now endorsed that behavior.
Correct. You promoted it. Yeah, 100%.
And you don't get many opportunities to rewire that.
Well, standard you walk past, the standard you accept.
Exactly.
Standard you walk past, standard you accept. I remember when I was down there, they finish their field session, and then a group of players are sitting on the field, and then the boys are going through their Tai Chi almost of their extras. And Frank Panisi was next to me. I said, "What are they doing there?" And he goes, they're the chiefs. They're the leaders." I said, "What's the principle of this?" He said, "Mate, they sit down for a minute or 2 or 10 or 30 after the session, and they recap, did we hit the goals of what we want to achieve on this field session or not, before they go home, shower off, and then come back and review the session the next day." And then you'll see them, they only sat down for a couple of minutes, and then 1 or 2 of them will go over and be, "Hey, that little left edge play that we ran, your timing was off. Let's just walk through our timing there." Or it might be, "Mate, you threw a bottle on the ground when we're meant to put in the tray." So they iron out any issues, and it comes back. It's the most important thing for a leader in any setting is communication. Communication. You need to speak even if your voice shakes. And as a leader early on, you need to act as if to build that almost self-confidence and then confidence within your team to get the momentum going, to have this sort of an environment where people speak up. So the tough conversation where you say, I really need to grab Johnny and have a coffee with him and talk about what he did yesterday. Day goes by, week goes by. How hard is it to grab Johnny then? It's the same thing.
Like 2 months ago when you did that.
Right there, man. Like,
and then what happens? Complaining, whispers, and then ultimately resentment and frustration.
Yeah. So
that's the cycle.
Yeah. The leader, the Billy Slater, Tino example is like, you're only, see again, going back to that example, it's not life and death, but it creates this environment, sport, like it is life and death. So there's so many lessons for businesses and say gyms to take from that. So what I'm sure Billy Slater would have known is they're only as strong as their weakest link. So he needs to raise that weakest link before they go out in a battle. It's the same thing with a gym, with any sort of business as well.
So far, let me get this right. Culture isn't free breakfast. It's not a fruit bowl. It's not like a Nespresso pod machine at work. I'll look after them. This sounds like this is a lot more about
Behavior. And that, look, I'm not going to take anything away from those things because they're with the right intention.
Yeah.
It's the first step. And the goal of this is to expose you to actually what it means.
So how do we define, how would you guys split the difference between a culture on vibes versus this performance culture?
Yeah, I think really simply is there's framework around a performance culture. Performance on vibe, like you can get there by accident, but then you can't articulate how you got there. Where performance is almost building a framework around. So it could be we have daily huddles on Monday. Those daily huddles are team driven, not manager directed. In a footy perspective, it's, I create within our team, I create mini teams. So this is a concept we have, which is mini teams. Mini units might be left edge, right edge, middles, but then they compete against each other. And then we announce a mini team of the week.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
To get points in that mini team, and you gamify it.
Yeah.
People outside the environment might think, well, that's lame.
No, it's just scorecards, right? Like we talk about scorecards.
When you're within the environment, it's like picking up the jersey. It's like everyone's standing up, shaking hands when you walk into a Melbourne Storm meeting. It's the same sort of thing. So to get those points, they have to sort of drill down more on the framework of what a high-performing team is. As an example, we play Ringer Rats tomorrow, prelim final. The amount of preview that the boys have done, which is self-driven, then peer-driven, then they compete with other mini teams and they present to the team. So Monday night we had our review, and then to close off the review, the semi-finals done. That's in the bank. Now we're on to the prelim final. I get the boys to spend 5 minutes in their mini teams and say, all right, talk about what you've looked at so far in terms of the Rats and how we beat Warringah. What can we control this week? Then they stand up in front of the team and present it. You can do that in a business scenario as well. You can do that with the sales team, with the trainers, with the management. But that's a framework that's locked in every week. So it's non-negotiable.
But guess what? If you don't have a framework, you don't have accountability. How can you hold someone accountable if you don't have a structure or a framework?
And because what will happen is they'll just go, my teenagers don't care.
There is no, if I haven't told you what I need and what I want, and I haven't created structured opportunities, how can I actually hold you accountable? You need to use the analogy, you need to look in the mirror, not out the window, and understand that your staff or your team is a reflection of you as a leader. Don't be looking at what they've done wrong and where they're falling short. That responsibility falls on you. And I think that's part of leadership is 100%. Looking at yourself and what you have done and what you've controlled or haven't done. And if you take that first step, which I don't think is very common, certainly in the space that we're discussing, I think then you can start to take back some control and understand that if you have all these expectations and standards of people, but firstly, you haven't laid it out and created clarity, then you haven't given them the task and the system to actually achieve it. What are you holding accountability of?
All right, so let's hold a bit of a mirror up here for our listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for us.
Yeah, definitely.
So Zach, let's go to you first. If you walk into an organization, what are some of the signs of a weak culture?
I'd sit in on some of their meetings, their team meetings. Who's leading the meeting? Who's talking in the meeting?
Okay, I'm sorry, just to interrupt, and I'm not being funny here. Meetings. Like as in,
That's
like,
a good start. Yeah, some people don't even have them.
some people don't even have team meetings.
Okay,
Most.
perfect. Yeah,
Most, right? Like
So-
that, yeah.
Okay, so no team meetings. What's the dialogue and the exchange of conversation between leadership or the managers, quote unquote, and the staff? Is it directive or is it questions based? So my philosophy is, as a leader, my job as a coach and a leader is to serve the team. The boys don't serve me.
Yeah.
Okay, so if something doesn't happen, it's my fault. Even if it's not my fault, like, there's a whole talk of extreme ownership, but
Yeah.
genuinely, mate, like it's on me. So what can I be doing better? As a leader, the most powerful form of communication you have is questions. So as an example for my team, first question I'll ask is, what do we do well on the weekend? How do we need to do better? Then you can funnel that down. So I'd have a look at the dialogue and the communication within the organization. Second thing I'd have a look at is those things which we spoke about. What are the habits, rituals, and behaviors, good and poor? And I'd list all of them out and say, well, why are we doing this? If a class starts at 9 o'clock, why is a trainer getting in at 9:05? How many times did the trainer actually communicate or interact with the class? This is coming from a non-gym operator myself, but these are things that I'd look at. Do their members come in and spend time with each other and actually want to be there, or do they do the class, not talk to each other and get out? So those habits, rituals, and behaviors of the owners, the staff, and then the members, and then equally, like, what do people say one-on-one? So you pull the people out and have conversations with,
Like when the owner's not there.
yeah, and just say, what's it like to work here?
Wow.
Yeah. I think a great question to ask is, okay, Geronimo Academy, I speak to someone in your team and I throw them the keys and I say, 1 month, you run Geronimo Academy. What would you do differently?
Oh, that's cool.
What would you keep the same? What would you change? Like, and everyone's going to have 100 ideas, but it's like, okay, how would you implement that? What would it cost? Why do you think we haven't done that already? So get them thinking like the owner.
It's a great
well.
exercise.
Yeah. Just a few of the things immediately.
What would you pick up on? Weak culture.
Yeah, so to try and add an extension of value to what Zach said, which I completely agree with, I would probably observe through my lens, given what I do, which is mainly focused on the coaching, the performance, I would observe, say, a window between 30 minutes before a class to 30 minutes after. And I would see when they were there, what were their actions beforehand? Were they standing around? Were they being selfish? Were they communicating with others? Were they greeting people? Then I would look at their energy. I would look at their activity. And I would just look at all of the behaviors. None of that had anything to do with what they said, how technical they were. I would look at how they presented themselves, all of the non-negotiable behaviors. Those are the things that I would look at to represent culture.
Interesting.
Right, so we had an F45 and then we bought a second one. So we just thought the one that we bought was going to be the same as the one that we had. So we went in to do our first session and the team just said, they just walked in, pressed play on the warm-up and the warm-up was going on the TVs and we're like waiting for the instructors to like warm us up. And the whole class started warming up just looking at the TVs and just like, what's going on here? Because we're used to having like a trainer actually warm us up human to human. And like everyone was just staring at the TV because they were conditioned to it. And like it wasn't wrong. It was just a shit culture. And we didn't enjoy it, did we?
And they didn't even enjoy each other.
No. It's bizarre.
They'd almost been brought up to be neglected.
Mm.
And so when we brought in some care, they actually didn't receive us that well. It took us about 6 to 8 months to actually like wear them down a little bit to kind of like just open up a bit. It's almost because like they just weren't ready for it.
Going back to that piece, when I said Storm gave me everything, and the reason was because you asked me what they want, what they're looking for. The number one thing they asked for was effort. And the reason that's important is because if I told you, like the Storm did with me, first 2 weeks when we did the work program, I was practicing playing the ball and passing directly to someone's chest, like under 6 base skills.
Which you knew how to do.
Yeah, and I was a little bit kind of taken back. And we would do,
club,
yeah,
like,
you know what I mean?
How many premierships?
And my perception from being in other clubs, like if I didn't score a 100-meter try or do a highlight play, I had a shit game. This was the complete opposite.
Wow.
We're not looking for highlights. We're looking for someone to honor and own their role. Because if you, as a cog in the system, own and honor your role and the other 12 players do it, then we have success.
I always hear that, especially when they get interviewed after the game, which, by the way, I've noticed now, like at halftime when they, I don't know if this was a thing that's happened recently, but when they interview a player at halftime, the team now wait until the interview's finished and then they all walk in together, or some teams do.
That's deliberate.
Oh, right.
Some
Okay.
teams do. That's deliberate. Yeah.
So talk to us about that. And I've got some questions from the audience that have come through, so I'm going to ask you guys, just completely unfiltered. But how does the Storm take an off-cut and turn them into the next whoever? Like what? There's the work program. Then what happens after that? What's this know your role thing? What's the Purple Hearts thing?
Okay, so the other thing that, and I know this has changed in the landscape, but this will be shocking to someone who hasn't been involved in a sports environment. The next day after every training session, we would do 90 minutes of video review. And you probably think, well, what on? And of course, we do a lot of skills games. So not a lot of just mindless, numbing conditioning like we used to back in the day. A lot of skills to games that create all these different scenarios. And we would review these. And of course, when I first started there, I'm like, well, scored this mad try, did all these crazy things. Not one of it was shown in the video review. And there was a part of me that I reflect on now as a coach and working in the consultancy space. I was almost brainwashed because what I had acknowledged, or the way that I thought I could get acknowledgement and reward before,
Or add value.
yes, was through these things that aren't valuable to the Melbourne Storm. The effort-based areas were valuable. So it would be like you'd show a game-based scenario and it'd be someone making an effort or someone chasing someone down or someone shutting the gate, these small effort-based actions. We'd go into the room with a video review and each position had 3 simple actions that you had to achieve. And I'm talking like catch the ball on the full, find your front and communicate with your inside man. So what happened when that was presented to me as my role? The 3 most basic actions that only relied on effort, no skill or talent. How do you think I felt? Empowered.
Empowered, yeah.
I was like, of course I can do this.
Yeah, of course.
So now I've got this confidence and I'm empowered to believe that I can actually achieve this and do my role. Then, because you've given me everything, the reason you gave me everything is because you have no excuses. If I've given you everything and all I'm asking for effort, you have no excuses. So I was asked to give my best effort. My role was simplified, not outcome-based. It was simplified into the simplest actions and I felt empowered. That was the journey for me to completely shift my mindset and perspective.
Really?
They've also got that in the review room.
Yes,
And they've also got literally like a scoreboard of locks, halves, back 3 or wingers. Those 3 things, you got to score from 1 to 10. And there's the player's individual score that they give to the coach. Is this how it was? And then the coaches give you a score. And I think Frank was explaining that if it's 1 or 2 scores off, you sit down and have a conversation. But if it's sort of within a score, then it's fine. But that score then goes up. It's either green or red. Pretty simple. So it's there in writing, black and white.
So hang on, wait. So like after the game, you'd like, how do the players? So they rate themselves, or they rate?
You rate yourself, and the coach rates you, and it's visible for everyone to see, green or red.
Really?
And they go through and they said, look at our result, the scores up there. Look at the wins and what blokes rate themselves. So straight away, this team driven over boss, manager,
that's a
gym owner or coach.
Insight. That's a big insight.
The head coach then doesn't have to stand up and berate. He can literally, which comes way back to the theming, which I love and we do at Norths. I encourage businesses to do it. I encourage the mini teams within businesses to do that, to compete against each other. You come in and you literally just point at that and say, okay, tell me what went wrong on the weekend, boys.
And they've got the answers.
They've already put the sticker up.
They've got the answers. Some people might perceive leadership as you getting up and giving a great speech and telling everyone what to do. My transition from what I believe was leadership, which was being a great teammate, and based on probably my childhood and getting to where I was I know how to put shit on my back. And even in the space that we're talking about, the gym setting, my leadership style was like, follow me. And surely everyone will just follow me. Like, look at the things that I'm doing. I'm upholding the standards. These are the actions. Just do what I'm doing. That doesn't work.
Right.
That doesn't work. I need to empower the individual. Questions and thought-provoking questions is the number one way. They have the answers, but you're not giving them an opportunity to do that, to develop, to turn into a leader.
So many of our owners that's them to a T. Like it's like I'll do it myself. I'll show you how to do it. But then they hire a team and they don't communicate like how to model their behavior. They go, I'm sure they can just watch me and do it, right?
And I've given you the KPIs. Hey, let's get this level of retention. Let's get this many sales. That's an outcome. What are the actions that are going to lead to the outcome? And can we create the actions that are effort-based? And if you have effort-based actions and your staff are empowered, there's a good chance that now you are going to have a system that is developed for success.
Can I break down sort of the meat of this, I reckon, for your listeners? So you need to reverse engineer this from the start. Okay. So what sort of an environment do you want to create? What does it look like? Then with the team that you have, get in the room with a whiteboard and literally come up with your theme. So have an idea. So as an example, with Norths, I came to Norths from Manly. There were good habits that Norths won the comp in 2016, always within the finals. There were good habits that still lingered around the place. People could talk about them, but there was no like definition of it. So in 2021, my first year as head coach, I said, let's create, so Norths, they're called the Shoreman. And I said, let's create the ideal Shoreman. What does he look like?
So that's team identity.
Team identity and a theme. So then if I stood up there and I didn't, the boys named him Shory, one of them got up with the leadership team with a pen and literally we drew this bloke who was a mythical figure. And we announced the Shory of the week, who was the player who demonstrated those NTR values the most. And then all those frameworks that we spoke about, they underpin the theme. And then the theme drives where we want to get from an outcome. So you don't want to sort of, chase two rabbits and catch neither. I think you need to start at what's your outcome of where you want to get as a team, reverse engineer what that looks like. How do we guarantee that we get there? The next year, good to great. I said, all right, we're considered a good team. No one ever refers to Norths as great. So we had this theme and it was on all of our social media posts and everything. Only we knew what it meant was G2G.
Oh man.
And good to great. So all of our messaging was, this was a good session. How do we make it great? Okay, we beat Randwick at Coogee. How do we make it great? What would great look like here? So then we use that. I think for a gym, like to get your outcome of where you want to get to, that's our goal. But then just park that. Okay, then design a theme of what that looks like. It can be Melbourne Storm, All Blacks, but it's got to be something that is generated from within the group. It can't be you telling them, hey, I've heard the New England Patriots were one of the most successful NFL teams. Let's call ourselves the Patriots this year. It doesn't work like that. Break them up into their teams, get them to brainstorm, get them to come back to the group and present. Again, you want to be sitting at the back of the room in all of this. Throw the whiteboard marker to someone else. And then from that, say, okay, that's our theme. The theme might be the number one gym in your area, or a place to, I don't know, what are some taglines for gyms?
We've seen some mistakes. Like whenever an owner wants to make and get 20 more members or make 10 more grands, it just flops. It just absolute strikeout.
So then it's what are the habits, rituals, behaviors that drive that? Then the part we haven't spoken about is how do we keep ourselves accountable, and what happens if we're not hitting this?
So what's an example of that, like in your team? So what's it? How to keep ourselves accountable, and what happens when we're off?
Really simple one is discipline was an issue for my team early on in the year.
Was it?
I said if we give more than single-digit penalties, you're going to lose a game, or turnovers. So 1 to 9 penalties, you can tolerate that. 10 or more, you can't. So we designed that. Okay, if you get any more than 2 as an individual, you're washing the training bibs. You're taking the training bibs home and washing them. If you get any more than 3, then you take the entire. We've got 150 players at Norths. Colts, grade, women's teams. You take all the training bibs for the whole club. Wrecks your washing machine. But there's guys who've been given a yellow card wrongly by the referee, and they've still had to take the bibs home. So, I mean, that's something which the boys get a laugh out of. But like genuinely, that bloke will never give a yellow card away again. So it's an easy example I can give. But
the opposite is Zach getting up and saying, boys, we want to win the grand final.
Yeah.
And we want to have less than 15 penalties. And then you're expecting ownership and buy-in. It's a fantasy. How is that ever going to happen? You need something to latch onto that has meaning, that has purpose. So without that, you're presenting outcomes, KPIs and targets that people have no attachment to, they've had no involvement in, but you're expecting ownership and the expectations and standards that you have for yourself as an owner. It's not possible.
When times get hard then, or similar to the scoreboard, you have it up there. It's not values that you guys have decided to come up with when you founded the gym, as an example. You're saying, this is what we stood for, guys. Tell me what these mean. Are we being good to great here? Are we being, for us, like Shorey? Are you being an ultimate shoreman? Are you representing what it means to play for the Melbourne Storm? Again, you're just asking a question.
What's coming up for you?
Like heaps.
Yeah. I'm like placing this, everything that is Tua saying is like over the studios, but like
But for us,
even for us.
Even for us, yeah. But like, to be open and honest with you guys, yeah, we're probably doing a bit too much of the top-down stuff. I think we've got to let go a bit and let the team, create some of their own identity, create some of their own standards. Like accountability it's hard for us and our clients to like define, put their finger on and uphold. And I think it's because maybe, the team's got to galvanize around it themselves.
You can orchestrate.
Yeah.
You can, you're at the front, but if they haven't made the decision, the worst thing you can do is do exactly what Zach said, and you get up and you present and say, this is what we're going to do. Create even a smallest opportunity of 5 minutes and get them to go discuss it. Even if you take them all the way, just let them give the answer, because you cannot hold someone accountable for something that they haven't created or agreed upon.
Now, what if, so we've got a theme. It's turning pro, right? Yeah, that was because like we felt like, we've exploded since December. Like we've grown 5 or 6x since December, and we've like broken all our systems because like you just outgrow them. Like it was fine for the level that we were doing, and then now we've just hit another band. So we identified a lot of areas where we were still amateur, semi-pro, and we needed to make the shift to pro. So what does that look like? What does that sound like? We've even like rebuilt our whole like internal operating system around that. The bit that's probably missing, or not missing, but it's actually like it's actually part of our 6-week cycle at the moment is like, what are the cadences, the rhythms, the habits, the rituals?
Yeah.
But I'm definitely hearing that. I reckon for the next cycle is how do we get
They got to buy in a bit more.
Yeah.
And who drives those? Who's driving those conversations? If we take you two out,
Well, we literally have.
Well, the good news is we're here right now and business is going on.
Well, they made
Good.
a couple of sales. They actually made a couple of sales.
we think.
All right, so I've got some spicy. So here are some questions from the audience. In no particular order, I have a team of spare parts. I struggle to have time to do a monthly meeting. I need to lead, but I don't know how to start. Now, this is from an owner of a franchise studio. What's your kind of impulse say around that?
I mean, unfiltered approach is the first thing. Presenting it as and framing it up that you don't have time is a huge issue.
Yeah.
If it's important, you'll make time.
Yeah.
And if you don't perceive that monthly meeting is important, then you certainly need to shift your perspective.
Yeah.
Within that meeting, there's no doubt that you need to go through some of the performance markers. What are our goals for next month? What's important to us? And refer back to perhaps the theme that you've created. Within that meeting, though, you have an opportunity to present what's important, maybe the data, maybe your perspective, maybe some of the lessons, but then you need to shift the accountability back to the team. That team, you should, if it's an hour meeting, you should speak for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You are there
With
to
questions.
orchestrate, and create thought-provoking moments. And if we do want to decide on what we're going to do next month in terms of goals and performance, ask the question, present the target, and then shift it back to the team. Let them come back to you with it. And I guarantee it'll 10x the buy-in and the effort for the following month.
So if I was to dig a little bit here, so she goes, I've got a team of spare parts. So what if like they haven't even done, what if she hasn't even done any of the foundation work, right? Let's just pretend she hasn't hired, off character, and there wasn't a proper process throughout it. There wasn't a recruitment strategy. There wasn't
onboarding.
no onboard. Like there is nothing to buy into.
Yeah.
Which I think is like pretty representative
happens,
of a lot, right? Like
Reality for a lot of businesses.
where do they start?
You got to go back to the bare bones. Like Zach said, you got to then You're not even talking about KPIs, targets, performance, and success. That meeting is
standards
establishing your identity.
Yeah.
Establish.
Yeah.
So go back to the ground level, like we just opened the studio. Who are we? What do we want to stand for? What's important? What are our standards? You need to go back to the bare bones.
Yeah. And is it the I don't quit camp?
Yeah, I'd hear
So, like you can create an environment where not as extreme as that, but you can say, I want everyone to write down, spend 5 minutes, write down 2 of the things that we do that you would want to delete immediately as a gym. And then 2 of the things that we don't do that maybe if I gave you an opportunity to speak openly without any consequence, you would say honestly that we need to do. And then you write them on a list. And then you say, after this conversation, there's no opportunity for anyone to walk out of the room and then say they're not happy with the way things are.
Yeah.
Because we're giving you the keys to drive this gym because you're empowering them as if they're the gym owners. You're taking away that, again, it's team driven over boss directed. Shandor's right. Like you need to design where you want to be, but it's not your vision. It's the whole team's vision. Then get them bought in with skin in the game there. Then build all your framework, your standards, and you say, okay, we're going to meet back here on Wednesday, on Friday, and then weekly from there to check back in on this. And, Ben, you're responsible for this. Dozy, you're responsible for this area. Okay, this is how we keep each other responsible.
The most important part following that meeting is your consistency. You get a week of motivation.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
so
you
true.
have to relentlessly be consistent on this. And if you're not willing to, you just won't get there. The other thing is these things that we're establishing, they're not rules. Rules get broken and it creates micromanaging. They are expectations and standards.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference is if I create a rule, we know inevitably it's going to be broken. And then I have to come down on you and we have to have a conversation. I have to manage you around all these rules. This the perception of rules, I think, is the wrong way to go about it. These are the expectations that we have for our culture and the standards that we want to live by. But you've set the standards and it's values. We want to talk about what's important to us, who we want to be, who we don't want to be, and then we establish our values. What are the standards and expectations that reflect those values? I just think it's important to understand that we're not creating rules. You have to do this. You can't do that. It's just the wrong mindset and perspective because that doesn't create ownership and buy-in.
That's it.
So I think that's just an important perspective for people to take when they're trying to establish this. And someone who's never done it or been exposed to the environments that we're talking about.
What if this person has a spare part that says, I can't come to that meeting and I just kind of wanted to do a couple of shifts?
That's their chance to show strong leadership
Or
or to build strong leadership. That it's a skill, it's a muscle. Yes, leaders are born. Leaders can be born, of course, but then they grow or they dissolve depending on the decisions they make. You can also grow and develop as a leader. You might not be the best leader in your industry, but sure as hell you can develop. Like it's a skill that you can develop. So that there I see as an opportunity. Step into it and say, okay, great. It's going to be ugly. I'm going to be nervous when I do this, but this is a chance for me to grow. And ultimately, like this end goal of the identity theme, revenue target, whatever it is, whatever drives you, to run this gym and lead this gym to your goal, like that's just one of the next steps that you need to get through.
I want to ask a question. When you went to Norths, I know that they still had some level of success, and no doubt you would have had a pretty good playing group, but very similar to the situation that this person would be in. I'm under financial pressure. This is the lens that I make decisions through, which is not good, but it's the reality for a lot of people. Plus, the thought of getting rid of a staff member or having to do additional tasks out of the already a million things that I'm doing is very daunting. And I'm leveraged by the current staff group. When you went into Norths, what was your perspective like? You would have been faced with the challenges. I'm going to have to make some hard decisions that in the short term are going to make the situation hard. But ultimately, if I don't do that, then it's just a fantasy that I'm actually going to build the culture that's going to create success.
Yeah.
What was like your mindset around that? Because I feel like that situation is most people's situation.
Yeah. You would have at least one person in the gym who would be a driver of positive culture that you want.
That's
at least one.
Yeah.
At least one. Find that person, like level with that person. I spoke about communication as a leader. I think the second most important thing you can do is be vulnerable as a leader. Okay. So rather than sit opposite the table here, like literally sit next to this person and say, this is where I want to take the gym. Or firstly ask them, how do you think things are at the moment? Where do you think we need to be? Why do you think we're not there? Why do you, and then I want to bring you in on this journey. Why do you think I want to bring you in on this journey? And then what's in it for them when you take them there and say, okay, what do you think's wrong with the place at the moment? Who do you think's not brought in? Okay, why are they not put in? Have I done enough as a leader?
Wow.
Okay, what do you think the best way to approach them is? This is what I'm thinking, you know, and then you bring them along on the journey. So devil's advocate, let's say if you don't have that one person, then you need to sit down with the whole group and show that vulnerability as a leader and say, this is where I want to take the gym as a end goal, based off where we are at the moment. What do you think? And they'll probably come back and say, well, no, we won't get there because of this. And then that's when you create that confrontational conversation as a group.
What did that questioning do with the one person?
It just like,
if you were that one person, what's the one thing you
I'd
would
feel
feel?
included, empowered,
Yes.
Appreciated, valued.
Do you feel like an owner?
Yes.
I would feel like an owner, and I would feel like
I would feel a responsibility to take ownership. That's what that conversation felt like for me.
Versus just an email in the middle of the night going, we want to get 300 members. Okay.
Good luck, boys.
That's pressure.
It is, isn't
And
it?
then they go, well, it's not my gym.
And it's not my money.
And it feels unattainable. And you
And
certainly don't
I'm
feel
already
empowered.
busy.
Yeah. You're just pushing that pressure down. Yeah.
Fuck, that's a gun response, boys.
Just while looking that up, can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
What about when you've got, a high performer or someone who's historically a high performer, and they're in a slump and they're in their head, they're overwhelmed, and they're just stuck in it? How would you snap them out of that? Particularly when they've got an identity around being a high performer, but they're looking at their numbers, they're looking at their performance right now, and they're not, and it's really affecting them. And like the head noise is actually affecting their performance more than their performance. How do you guys manage that situation?
Immediately hit pause with them. Hit pause. So get off site, go grab a coffee, go for a walk, and say, is it all right if I have a conversation with you and it's all going to be positive about growth? So you go away and you say, I want you to do an exercise. Well, I want you to rate yourself 1 to 10 in terms of your best high performing self at the moment. I want you to be honest, and I'm going to tell you why I'm getting you to do this. Spend 5 minutes. I'll do the same thing. Again, you're showing vulnerability. You share your answer with them. I'm a 6 at the moment. Okay, what would make me a 10? Well, at the moment, I'm going from meeting to meeting, day to day, week to week. I'm not doing my Sunday separation.
Good boy. I mean, not good boy,
yeah.
but shout out.
I need to grab one of those.
Yeah.
By the way. But these are the things that I need to be doing, and I haven't been doing them at the moment, right? Then I would ask them to write, what does their best high-performing self look like in terms of their actions, responsibilities,
I know
day to
exactly
day?
what you're going to say next.
Yeah,
based
yeah.
on this.
And get them to describe it. Then say, when you're doing that, how do you feel? What's stopping you from doing that at the moment? So take them away from the workspace environment, create physical space, then create that mental space. Remember, as a leader, you serve your team. Your team doesn't serve you. So if they're stuck, it's your fault. It's your fault. Okay, so forget gym owner, forget manager, and think coach. So how do you one-on-one coach them out of this situation? Again, you're not sitting opposite, you're sitting next to them. You say, all right, well, let's help you get there. What do you need from me? What do you need from me, mate? Do you need me to hold you to being more accountable to waking up early? Do you want me to call you at 4:30 in the morning, or do you need more space? Do you need a week off? Maybe I need to save you from yourself and give you a bit of space.
Gotcha.
So that's what I do.
But you're creating the room. They're actually writing their own plan.
Yeah.
So they'll hold themselves accountable to it, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you two perspectives. Firstly, like coach to coach, I already know Zach's a great coach just because if anyone's listening or watching, just because his tone of voice and how he speaks. Now, what we haven't thought about is a high performer has a different level of expectation and pressure. What Zach's done and what they actually need is some support sometimes because they're the ones that get neglected. They always have high expectations. They always expect that you're always going to be on, you're always doing the right thing.
You'll always come and save us, or the rest of us.
That's right. But at some point, that person gets burnt out too. And that person is a human. And the art of coaching or leading is coaching the person, not just the player. So taking an opportunity for this person in a world where they always have to be on, they always have to be the best. The measuring stick is so high that there is no off button, but you gave me an off button to be vulnerable, to say that, yeah, I am doing it tough. yeah, I'm not performing, and you give me a safe space and you support me, a hand on the shoulder, that for that person, the high performer, is everything.
Fuck.
Yeah. And that has a huge impact. That's what that person needs. Different to the spare part conversation.
What'd you get from that?
Well, we did a bit of a boo-boo this week because one of our team members sat down with us and she was like, How do you boys ever different person? How do you boys ever switch off? And we said, you don't switch off.
What are you fucking talking about? Waiting for work to start.
Whoops, I might need to look back on that one.
It comes down to
Control Z.
forms of communication as well. Rugby league bloke, Wayne Pearce. So my dad passed away 2016. About a couple of weeks later, I grew up with Mitch. A couple of weeks later, Wayne called me and he said this was probably his way of reaching out. He said, Zach, I run PCM, so process communication model courses, like maybe a couple grand to do the course. He said, I want to put you through because I've seen what you're doing with your coaching. I was coaching Colts under 20s at the time. And I'm sitting in a room with like Trent Robinson and these NRL coaches. I'm this young buck coming through. But what I learned, what was great in terms of like the facilitation process of that is we all feel like we all think that what we say lands with whoever we're speaking to. We think that everyone else communicates on our channel, but everyone's different. So as a leader, coming back to my most important point for a leader of communication, we're born with a certain style of personality. It can be upbringing, it can be parents, it can be the way the first friend group we have. And then we phase into something which is usually like that shedding a skin of your old self into your new self, which is where you become, you had a moment like literally, the rest of us, like mine was probably a couple of years after school where I was like, I think I said to you, like literally as a rugby coach, when I stopped playing, in the notes on my phone, I wrote down every single year from 2010 to now about where I wanted to be as a rugby coach. Might have been 1 or 2 years off. I've sort of and hit that. I realized I needed to become a certain person. So I formed into another style of personality that more from my natural one. But from a communication style, you could be a thinker persister. Okay. So let's say if Shandor's a thinker persister, let's say I'm a harmonizer. Okay. So then there's all these different types of personalities. All he needs to hear from me are the facts. What are the numbers? What are the targets? How much time does it take to get there? Okay.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, right?
That's his point.
As a harmonizer, I'm saying, why is Shandor not giving me eye contact here? Hey, I need to talk to you about something here. I'm asking you how your day's going. You'll think, mate, just cut to the chase here, mate.
2x
Comes money, let's go.
100%. So we're having this conversation. I've gone all fluff. I've walked out and I said, yeah, he knows exactly what I meant. A waste of time. So I think firstly, doing a bit of an analysis on what your style of communication is, and then the people within your team. And then when you present, so like for me, when I present to my team, if I got the 15 starters, so tomorrow, 23 blokes, I know that 1 minute or 2 minute delivery that I give has to hit a harmonizer, a rebel, a thinker, persister, promoter, So even Monday night reviews, or like if you're talking to a business, you need to hit those different types of personality traits so that it lands. So understand the person. I think that's really, really important. Before that, understand your own style of personality, communication. Yeah.
Was that within that PCM course?
Yeah,
You got that from?
Okay. Yeah. And then you can read, like there's a lot more reading you can do on that. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I suppose there's the 5 voices. There's probably other things too, right? Like disc profiles, Myers-Briggs.
Mate, as a trainer, like you could be have a rebel who's a gun trainer in your gym, right? All the members love them. If you sit down and try and really like have this set framework and regiment, instead I could be like, mate, you want to be the number one trainer in this state, okay? At the moment, your following is 10,000 Instagram followers. Where do you want to get it to? 100, 200 million, and you can start to speak their language as a rebel and say, mate, I know how you like to run your classes, your style. Okay. If you could design your own class, what would it look like? And you just hold their shoulders to where you sort of need them to get to. But then that trainer, he or she's feeling like they're coming up with it and I'm a rebel. I'm feeling valued here, So it's just, understanding your people probably it comes down to.
It's really like Have you boys seen The Last Dance?
Yeah.
Mad,
Yeah. So good.
And you see where Rodman was off on another planet, porn star, strippers, Vegas, the whole situation, right? Michael Jordan was just relentless. Scottie Pippen was somewhere in the middle there, and then there's the rest of the team. The coach had to try and manage all of that in one go, and his whole thing was around this oneness of the team. But there were plenty of times where Rodman just fucking disappeared for the weekend, and the other players were like, come on, what about that guy? But he'd always come back on Monday and out-train everyone else. Have you guys been in sporting teams or environments where you've always got that Rodman, and it's how do you manage that personality within the rest of the group?
Oh, well, I think Zach nailed it. Even if you want to say statistically in a room, you are bound to have the rebel and all these different people. It's inevitable. So the coach that you're referring to, and I love that you referred to that, and I think everyone would agree. If I was to explain what makes a great coach, I'm pretty sure the unanimous answer would be they're a great man manager is how it would be explained. That's the greatest skill set. I'm sure there's heaps of good coaches who are really tactical, very strategic, but if you can't manage the group, you won't get the best out of the group.
Manage the group.
But the ability to do that is first.
Yeah.
You have to understand the different personalities because, if I just take it right down to my perspective on what I do day to day, in a group training environment, I know that I have 30 people and they are all different shapes and sizes. They come from different environments. Some are introverted, some are extroverted. Some like to be challenged. Some can't handle a challenge. So my ability through repetition for over a decade is to be able to go and bounce from person to person every 10 to 15 seconds and use a different tone, give them a different cue, push them in a different way. That same thing translates to when you're trying to get the best out of a team. You have to have an individual approach. And I think the biggest takeaway I took from Zach is you genuinely believe that what you're saying or your way is the right way and they get it and they understand it. And I kind of just put myself in my shoes. I'm I've definitely been a victim of that with good intentions. But that's the growth as a coach. Asking the questions and being able to shift the way that you do things strategically with different individuals. That's what makes you a great leader and a great man manager or coach, I think.
I think as well, understand, mate, great point. And you never arrive there. I'm hopeless at a lot of things, dreadful. I've still got to be a lot better in a lot of areas, but like we all do. But the point on that is I would encourage all gym owners or all of your listeners to learn more about the actual person, not the trainer. Genuinely want to know about them as a person, because that's going to help pull the curtain back on their whole story and what drives them. They're not going to open up straight away, especially if you have never asked a question. They're going to read your bluff straight away and go, you listen to the Geronimo Academy. Exactly what you're doing here, mate. So did I. But asking, again, if you can't ask those questions, hold up the mirror, and then maybe as a leader you haven't built that rapport. So then start with building that rapport.
Well, one thing I heard the other day from Craig as an extension, I kind of knew it and I'd heard about it, but then I heard it in a video. He's calling you school teacher. He's calling, he's getting around to as many different people as possible so he can understand the person, all different opinions, where they've been, what they're like, just gathering as much information as possible about the person. The player or the coach or the manager, that's something that you do. It's not who you are.
Right.
If I want to connect with the person, I need to understand the person. And I think going back to Craig, I'll use Craig as a reference and I explain this all the time. He's a hard man. I fear him in some respects, not physically, but I fear him. But when I say I fear him, I fear disappointing him. The thought of, so it's a little bit of a cheat code for Craig because he has an aura and a legacy. So already I've built that. Yes. But for me coming in late in the game, my perception is already this is the GOAT, right? So it's a bit of a hack. Let's say you don't have that. Now, he's very clear on his expectations, but he also empowered me. He didn't make me feel like I'm doing something that I can't do, right? So I'm empowered, and then he only asks for my best effort. That's really important on the front end, I've found. And I've found good success with laying it out very simply and clearly so you have full clarity, but then I just ask for your best effort. No one doesn't think that they can give their best effort. How could you not? of course there's going to come an opportunity. Like just because you give your best effort doesn't mean we're successful.
Mm.
And if you're not successful, great. We have an opportunity to reflect, and then that creates a whole reactive process where you can take ownership, you can accept it, and I'll give you an opportunity to ask the questions, put those things into practice. That's growth. But there were opportunities where, you know, he gave me my chance. I tore my ACL and he called me and he said, I just want you to focus on your recovery. I've got you another contract. He didn't have to do that. And there were these little moments, the hand on the shoulder moments, like Zach was explaining, where like I would run through a fucking brick wall for this bloke.
Because why?
Because he cared about me.
Bingo. That's
Me, you know, he cared about me. It actually makes me a little bit emotional to think about it. But like, and what I've struggled with in the past as a leader, not a leader, as a boss, I think I struggle with the authority side to it.
You having authority?
Me having authority, which I know, and for most people that I have this conversation that are close to me, they're like, how?
Yeah.
You know, in some respects, I have so much authority, maybe with the coaching, but as a boss, to hold people accountable to that, I struggle with a little bit. I struggle to be a boss and not a friend or a supporter at times. And I know other people would have that same situation, but you need to earn their respect. And their respect comes through all of these different moments. And the one that Zach mentioned, the one that I'm mentioning with Craig, is a form of that. But I just did not. It's like your mother. Like, you know, she can yell and scream and hit you all she wants, but when she's disappointed,
Worst. Yeah.
the thought of letting Craig down, I would want to avoid that at any cost. Like that's, how do you get to that? You know?
You become the goat.
Yeah.
And to add to that, there's two things I hear a lot from like really successful teams is not wanting to let the coach down and not wanting to let your fellow teammates down. How does a business owner cultivate the peer-to-peer stuff more?
All the things we've spoken about in this podcast, like creating really clear goals, then actions that lead to those goals, and then how you're going to hold yourselves accountable that's driven by the team. Then the team presents that. So literally, if you have a daily huddle, like I don't know how many of your clients would have daily huddles.
None.
Okay.
Precisely zero.
Okay. So there's the first one you can do. A daily huddle might be hard
Am I
for
wrong?
the gym, but
No, you'd be right. Yeah, you'd be spot on.
Some of them flat out having a weekly team meeting. Yeah.
weekly huddle, daily huddle. But going around, literally the four of us on a table, okay, this is my day. This is what I want to achieve today. This is how I'm going to achieve it. Then when I walk in tomorrow and stand up, you remember what I've shared with you. Did I achieve it? Yes or no? But why? So there, as a coach, leader, boss, gym owner, you can say, and what was the reason you didn't achieve that? And what are you going to do today to achieve that? So then you're almost like like your flywheel of week to, as you say, week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. You bring it down daily. There's a great saying where if you throw a frog in boiling water, the frog jumps out. Put it in cold water, turn it on the boil. It doesn't realize.
You literally said this one yesterday.
Did you? Yeah. But it's the same thing, mate. It's the same thing. Like then in a team environment, they're almost manifesting it themselves and they're putting it out there in the open that they have to deliver on this. If not, Ben might see me in the kitchen. He'll be like, "Hey Zach, I know you've struggled with picking up the phone and making those couple of calls to new leads. Do you want some help? This is what I tried." Then you're starting to build those habits of like a team-driven environment. Yeah.
But the biggest takeaway, and I'm sitting here listening to Zach, and my mind's going crazy too. You actually can't do anything. You have to put it completely back in the hands of those people. Like they have to come up with it. They have to own it. And then even when they don't, you still can't be the person to say, give the answer. You need to, again, ask the question. It seems simple, and it is simple. That's just what needs to be done. If you take it back to the very bare bones, anything that you take away from this and you've got this clear vision of what you want to build, great, have it in your head, try and engineer it and push people that way, but get them to land their own plane. Get them to come up with it and ask the questions why and what they can improve, and then get them to say it and action it. Well, that's the hack.
That's it. Yeah. It's simple, but it's difficult. They have to do it immediately. And And again, show that vulnerability. Say, team, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is why I'm going to be holding these huddles. Because I put my hand up as a leader. I don't think I've given you guys strong enough leadership. So the way I'm going to deliver strong leadership is to empower you. Does that make sense?
And that's a great strategy. Like if you want to deliver something or create a new standard, show some vulnerability first as a frame. I do that all the time, whether I'm thinking about it or it's subconscious. But like if I want to say something or get someone else to say something or even hold someone accountable for something, I will first be vulnerable and take ownership.
Yeah.
I do believe that there's a perception with people as business owners or a leadership role where they think that they can't show any signs of weakness. Vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is strength and power.
Yeah.
So, we need to take that on board.
Huge. It's fucking massive, eh? This is gold, isn't it? What are you thinking about?
Thinking about some things we need to change in our work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was literally just thinking, I'll be vulnerable right now. So we've got a 3-year vision.
Yeah.
And it expires this year. It expires when we get to Hawaii, which was the destination. Like that was our Super Bowl, right? So November 11, we'll be there for a week. The clients fly in, the team fly in. Like it's going to be massive. And like I'm doing this live right now, right? So the theatre, because I like a little bit of theatre. So the theatre was going to be, when the clients fly out and it's us and the team is then I unveil the next 3-year vision. And it's like a, Steve Jobs moment. It's fucking hero, like hand out the new magazines and everyone's going fucking mental. But what I'm hearing.
Yeah, they're not going to buy in, right?
Well, they will buy in because they're
Hawaii with us.
We're 7 Mai Tais deep.
Anybody would buy into anything.
But I reckon that will be our version of the fruit bowl.
Yeah.
Right.
Who depends who's come up with a vision.
Well, historically it's been me, us.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I'm feeling like our next 3 years.
We need to invite them in a bit more.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's not just me going on another solo CEO retreat going, I've got it.
I've got it, guys. Because the real ownership, the real accountability will come when they have their footprint.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. If something resonated with you, then do one of 2 things. Either leave a review or send this episode to a mate who's in the industry who might need to hear this. But if you want more right now, because your head might be spinning and you're like, all right, what the hell do I do right now? Then in the show notes, you'll find a link to where you can book in for a free 15-minute checkup on your studio, where we get to have a look at how you're going right now and where some of the kind of quick win opportunities are to get you moving faster. I can't wait to be back in your ears next week. And if you're listening to this right now, I want you to know that I love you, I appreciate you, I'm grateful for you, and I'm in your corner. You are on the right track and I believe in you. So keep going, and I'll see you next week.